Good afternoon. Thank you to all of you to talk with us today about Measure 26245, the renewal of the gas tax. Commissioner Matz, I'm wondering if you can just kind of tell us a little bit about what this measure is about.
Sure. Well, next month, Portlanders will be asked to vote on and renew our Fixing Our Streets program. This is our local gas tax, which has been in place since 2016. Every 4 years, this gas tax sunsets unless it's approved by voters. What's on the table, and I think this is very important to emphasize, this is not a new tax. This is not the raising of a tax. This is just the continuation of a tax that's been in place for many years at this point. In terms of nuts and bolts, this represents a 10 cents a gallon gas tax. Portlanders have been paying it for a long time. Those funds go ultimately to PBOT, and PBOT uses those dollars for bread and butter stuff. We're talking about filling potholes, paving roads, and doing basic repairs and doing basic safety improvements to our roads. I should also add the funds that are raised by this represent about a third of the dollars that PBOT has for paving, potholes, and safety improvements. So should this proposal not get renewed, it would have dire consequences, frankly, for our ability to maintain our transportation infrastructure.
Great, thank you. Elliot, can you tell us a little bit about why you are supporting this?
Yeah, so this is a measure that we have supported the previous measures going back to 2016, 2020. We have a lot of folks that work on these projects for Project 17 that work for PBOT. Again, engineers, planners, technicians who do project management on these things, as well as design engineering when that needs to be done. They see this as critical funding for important work that the Bureau needs to provide for the public. Additionally, this is a unique system that goes back to the voters every 4 years, right? And so we have accountability built into it through an oversight board. I'm a member of that oversight panel. I've sat on that panel for most of its time, going back to 2016 about. And this is a transparent program that we think has been getting results and giving the voters of Portland what they have asked for, which is increased safety and maintenance on our streets. And that's something that is directly critical to the work that our folks provide for the city, and we want to see that continue.
Great, thank you. It looks like the projections for how much this would raise is about 70 or 70.5 million, something like that.
Yeah,
okay.
Over 4 years.
Okay. That looks to be a little bit less than what the last measure raised. Is this because of people moving more to electric vehicles, or what is kind of behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. Really good eyes there. This is a gas tax. One of the good problems that Portland has is that Portlanders in remarkable numbers are moving away from vehicles that are primarily fueled through old-fashioned gas. We have much more fuel-efficient cars. We have many cars that don't rely on electricity at all or on gas at all. So that's why over time the amount of dollars that are raised by the gas tax are decreasing as we're seeing efficiencies in how people get around. So that's a good news problem. It also points to a larger question of the fundamental instability around how we go about funding transportation. From a PBOT perspective, I largely fund our infrastructure through our gas taxes and through parking meter revenues. Both are in decline. Gas taxes are in decline because our vehicles are becoming more efficient, and that's a trend that I welcome, but we still have to deal with. And then, frankly, my parking meter revenues are going down too, because increasingly people are working from home 1 or 2 days a week. So, they're not filling up our parking garages in downtown. They're not plugging parking meters in our business districts and whatnot the way they were, frankly, before the pandemic.
So, one question I have is, is this fair for instance, someone who drives a gas-fueled car, they are going to be encountering the full weight of this tax versus someone in an EV, especially considering that EV owners tend to be higher income.
That's a great question, and it's a conversation that, frankly, we're having with our partners down at the state legislature. I'm deeply committed to making sure that our funding systems are fair and equitable. Indeed, I'm going to need some, I think, support from the state legislature to change the way that we fund our basic maintenance here. Frankly, I think our next legislative session is going to be largely focused around transportation issues. I think that's one of the conversations that'll come up. There's also this larger conversation that Oregon and, frankly, the entire nation has to have around using gas taxes to fund transportation maintenance, since we expect in 10 or 15 years, the system is going to reach a critical point of implosion. In fact, I think we're awfully close to that moment right now.
And so that's something that presumably the next city council will need to confront as well, in terms of locally how to fund street repair as well as the equity of it.
Absolutely. This problem is, let me tell you, renewing, fixing our streets is an important way to get us through, frankly, the next 4 years or so. But we have a much larger problem that we need to address. I hope that by the time I retire from public life, we'll see a majority of cars on the road being electric, and that'll mean the gas tax won't work at all. Certainly, that's going to be the reality for my children, who are 15 and 13. But in the meantime, this is an important stopgap that we need right away. I'll tell you, I've mentioned before, these dollars represent a third of the funds that we use to fund pothole maintenance and paving and, making our intersections safer. So if this were to go away overnight, frankly, the impact would be devastating.
What is the backlog right now? Like, how significantly will this dig into that backlog?
Backlog in terms of maintenance?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, we have, I don't have the exact number in front of me. This allows us to basically keep making progress the way we've been making progress, but we have billions of dollars in maintenance backlogs that we need to get to. And frankly, we don't have a funding mechanism in place that allows us to do that work. So there's a larger long-term conversation which needs to happen. I'll tell you, this conversation today isn't so much about the long term. It's about making sure that on July 1, I can send folks out there and fill those potholes, pave those roads, build bike lanes where we need bike lanes, do crosswalks, repair broken streetlights, that kind of stuff.
Not fall further behind on that backlog.
Yeah. And should, a 33% cut, and I could translate that into human bodies too. But it would be a significant blow, probably the most significant blow to Portland's transportation system that we've seen in a generation, and perhaps ever. I can't think of a similar funding cliff that we've faced before.
And if I understand correctly, this would devote about a third to safety improvements, a third to community. I can't remember exactly how.
Yeah, it goes into 3 buckets, basically. One for paving, one for repair, so that means things like potholes and whatnot, and one for safety. Did I say safety? So it's safety, paving, and repair, basically.
Okay.
And we're trying to track other changes in City Hall. We're moving towards a district-based election. So thinking of the city in 4 different quadrants. We've gone out of our way to make sure that we're going to divide these dollars relatively equally amongst the 4 different quadrants, while also being informed by, frankly, history and demographics and economics here, making sure that we're serving communities that have been neglected for generations.
In terms of safety improvements, is there any kind of prioritization in terms of the top crash corridors?
Oh, absolutely. That's what we have. When you don't have enough resources, you have to lean into your biggest problems. Frankly, I think 70% of our fatal accidents happen on our high crash corridors. So you will see major safety investments in those spaces.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about how projects are chosen? Does that go through the oversight committee? And I don't know if this is something, Elliot, that you would be able to talk about.
Sure. Why don't I let Elliot go in there, jump in here for a little bit. I'm not sure if you choose projects or just make sure I'm not wasting money.
Sure thing. Yeah. So, the Oversight Committee's role on this is as, gas tax fluctuates year to year, month to month, right? There are sometimes overages or underages kind of on a short-term basis, right? And so the Oversight Committee is tasked with making some of those decisions about moving money around between projects sometimes, right? So, if there is an opportunity to add a project or partially fund a project that could be done that wasn't on the original list, that sort of thing. That's something that the Oversight Committee has taken up. Also, if there's an opportunity to do something like get federal matching funds, grant money that would become available if there was PBOT money that was put up, then the Oversight Committee has been involved in making that sort of decision. In terms of the initial decisions about how projects are identified, that is done by the Bureau, and that's been done at the outset.
And let me jump in here. Good handoff, Elliot. In terms of paving, we're looking at spending, let's say this raises $17 million a year. We're talking, in terms of paving, we're talking about spending about $19 million a year. Or not, I think over the course of the program, actually, I think it's the correct way I should put it, is about 19 million on our busiest streets, about 4.5 million to pave some of our local streets. In terms of safety improvements, about 9 million for busy streets, about 6 million for neighborhood streets. Another important aspect here is really prioritizing safe routes to schools. I'll tell you, my kids ride their bikes home from school, so we'll spend $6 million to make sure your kid can get from the schoolyard back to your backyard. And in terms of community, what we're calling community streets, which are basically maintenance projects within specific districts or whatnot, about $5.5 million on potholes, about $3.5 million for signals and lightings, $4 million to freshen up some of the gravel streets that we have out there, $2 million for safer intersections, and about $2 million, 2.5 maybe for bike and pedestrian stuff, and $2 million for traffic calming projects.
Okay, great.
I would also add about half of the safety bucket is meant to leverage additional grant funds. So there were projects like that in the last tranche of funding, leveraging the Fix Our Streets funding from what voters approved 4 years ago to secure a $20 million grant to invest in 122nd Avenue, which is a high crash quarter. So looking to make these dollars go even further.
Okay. Do you guys have somewhere, or can you direct me to kind of where there what types of projects or what specific projects were funded with the gas tax over the past 4 years? It would just be, I think, helpful just to look at some of those.
Absolutely. Amy,
Yeah,
can you take care of that one?
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think that is, to be honest, that pretty much answers all our questions. I mean, one of the benefits of having come before us, at least twice before, is that we know kind of what this program is about. Laura, do you have any other questions?
I don't. I think you hit the top ones and the bigger question of how can we keep going this way with these kind of taxes. But yeah, thank you. I think I had my questions answered.
Yeah,
well,
I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to thank you for highlighting this. We have so many things going on in the ballot and in the city right now. This bread and butter proposals like this can kind of get lost in the mix. If I could emphasize any theme, which is, number one, this is not a new tax. Number two, we're not raising taxes. And number three, we're spending this on bread and butter stuff we all agree on. Paving roads, filling potholes, making our streets safer.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time, everyone.
Thank you. I hope you can get out and enjoy this beautiful day.
You too.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.